This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, so it's 7:05, 7:06, Thursday, August 24th. This is the Southampton Greenway Committee.
You are recording?
We are recording now.
Okay.
Yep. So we have a quorum. We have 2 representatives from Ty and Bond. We can do a quick intro all the way around just for reminders. I'm Aaron Tauscher, chair of the committee. Good enough. Go ahead, Michael.
Mike Bueller. Mark Cassis, chair, member of the committee. I'm David DeRoy.
You guys have to say your full
We're always deferring to the committee. Alex Fagnan, project manager with Ty and Bond.
Alex Buccolette, project engineer, Time Bond.
Would you spell your last name, please?
Yes, B-O-U-T-H-I-L-L-E-T-T-E.
I've never had to do that before.
My name's Brown. And you're also Alex?
Yes.
Okay.
Just every time I have to spell my email over the phone.
Wow, that's a name. Okay.
David DeRozier.
Ellen Senghas.
Jenny Brown.
And
Joy Pius.
I'm Kristen Biancuso, a butter.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Would you spell your name too, please? Kristen.
boy.
Other ways to spell Kristen.
Kristen was with a K and an E. Kristen.
Okay.
And then Biancuso is, and my last name used to be Smith. Boy.
What'd you say?
B as in
Oh,
boy.
okay.
I-A-N-C-U-Z-Z-O.
C-U.
Yep.
C-U.
Z-Z-O.
U-Z-Z. Oh, okay.
And where do you live?
Where the?
I'm on the Gun Road.
okay, good.
Great.
Okay.
And another,
Okay.
And you are?
Joy Piper, Select Board Liaison.
great. You want to come up?
Okay.
Both of you, okay?
No, she wants to sit back there. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so I queued up time on first things first. I figured we can talk all things project design and then any thoughts that would apply to a presentation in the near future.
Absolutely.
Table is yours unless you want to start with questions or anything, but
I'll run through current progress and then we can go questions, anything that's going on. So
okay.
I brought Alex with me because he's a project engineer, but he's also serving as the assistant project manager on this one. It's a big, significant enough project that you get both of us, so we're both here. Couple pathways ongoing. One, if you recall, last time we spoke is the whole Mass DOT project initiation process. We had a little bit of a presentation to them. Recently, they notified us there's a project number assigned, and they indicated they're going to go to project review committee at the next meeting, which I actually don't know the date of. I've been trying to get it from them, but I believe it should be in September or October. And the project is all queued up to go to that committee. Once approved by that committee, we'll be in a good place in terms of getting some attention from Mass DOT to really start working towards some of those milestone deliverables. So that's a positive update. On the design side, because MassDOT lagged us out of the spring PRC and didn't let us, they're trying to slow us down, I guess. We went full steam ahead with design data collection activities. So I think a lot of this was ongoing when we met last, but we've completed the survey of the corridor. We've completed the bridge inspections. I've got drawings here I'll show you in a second of all those things. We've completed geotechnical borings. We've completed wetland delineations. Am I missing any? Geotech. That's it?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And so all of that data has allowed us to really begin doing some of the preliminary engineering in earnest. On the highway side of that, meaning like the actual trail layout, honestly, all we've done at this point is kind of lay a baseline in. We're actually going to get into some preliminary grading as early as next week, and that will allow us to really start understanding, the width of the impacts and if we've got any problem spots with the right-of-way and potential encroachment. So that's coming soon, but our bridge team has gone ahead and made some really good progress at this point. So Alex and I met with the bridge lead yesterday, and there's kind of 3 core things they're doing right now. One is a modeling of the existing structures. and they model those structures with a design load on them. And in this case, the design load is like an ambulance. So really, there's two kind of critical vehicles for these bike path bridges. One is an ambulance in case there's an incident, in an area that's not otherwise accessible from a trailhead. And the other is like a snooper truck, which is an inspection truck for the bridges in the future. So in order to inspect the bridges this time, we had to hire a firm to go climb them because there was no convenient access. In the future, after the project, inspections will be able to be accomplished from the top with like a bucket truck. The guy will get in the bucket, go down around, and be able to do all the inspection. So that's part of the design load, actually, so that they can accommodate that function. So that modeling is 95% complete. They were waiting for a few bits of data from the bridge inspection company just to finalize. But basically, what they told me was, and this isn't unexpected, but the load ratings that they're coming back with have like a factor of safety of 10. Because these bridges were built to carry massive railroad loads, and we're talking about a modern ambulance, which is still a big vehicle, but these things are obviously very sturdy and strong and can handle a bike in the future. So we knew that, we could prove it.
So when you say that, does that mean the bridges in the existing condition?
The bridge, I believe the way that the load rating would have been done in the model would be a rehabilitated condition. So, with a deck
Same
surface.
design parameters, but in good
Right,
repair.
but
Not-
generally based on the members that exist there, but rehab.
Not like putting a different bridge out there. So that one out there just put back into serviceable condition, which, for all intents and purposes is going to be like repainting the steel, repairing a little bit of section loss, welding some members back together. But they're actually, the inspection team came back and said, these things are in pretty good shape considering the age.
So that's both the Gun Road Bridge as well as the one over the main near Sheldon.
So the span over the actual Gun Road actually has a lower factor of safety, and that's because visually you can see that the depth of that steel is less. But the factor of safety is still like a 4. And if you were driving down the road and you go over a bridge that's got the load rating sign, meaning it's got a restriction on it, that thing's below a 1. So you can see you still have like very good condition compared to other things. So the two other things they're working on are, one's called an abbreviated bridge type selection report, and that, in this case, we're obviously going to reuse the existing, but they still go through a documentation procedure just to kind of lay out the different elements to put any alternatives to rest. And the third one is called a structure report. And really the intent of the structure report is to identify any deficiencies. And so there are 3 things that have caught the attention between the inspection and our preliminary work. One is that we suspect at Gun Road, basically on either sides of the road, so the center pier and the north abutment, we suspect those are on wooden piles. And we suspect that because when we did the geotechnical borings, we found that the soils are pretty poor in that area. And so we're flagging it essentially to MassDOT, when we finally get the chance to submit. And there will be dialogue in the future about whether or not we need to do test pitting to assess the potential condition of those piles. Because the other abutments and piers are sitting right on rock. And so there's zero concern about, the connection there between the stone abutment and the rock beneath it. That's a sound connection. But if you've got a 100-plus-year-old wooden pile sitting in soils that get wet often, you've got to be concerned about the condition of those.
So the Gun Road crossing the Manhan is on rock?
The southern abutment.
Okay, the southern is, but not the
And
center.
then kind of the center and the north
Thank
are
you.
anticipated to be on wooden piles.
Yep.
Right, and likely because of the soils that we encountered there, and that's what kind of flagged it.
This is the bridge that crosses Gun Road.
Yep. The other thing that's been flagged is there's no what are called longitudinal stiffeners because of the age of construction, and I'm not even going to get into that because it probably is going to be determined that it doesn't matter and they're not going to do anything about it. But the modeling essentially flags that because of the ratio of the thickness of the steel to the depth of the beam. I'm not a bridge guy, so that's all I know about it. And then the third parameter is the low clearance at Gun Road, which we've spoken about before the last time I was here. And so I know that, this board brought that up. I thought it was a good and interesting suggestion to evaluate at this point. It'll go in to MassDOT as flagged as a deficiency, basically the vehicular clearance. And, going forward, there'll be discussions about, A, whether the state wants to pay for, a change to that structure to improve it, B, whether the town, wants to also participate in that, because there'd be additional, if we have to take that steel off and then design a new, piece to go up there, different process than what was envisioned, obviously, going in. So, but we're going down that road of exploring that alternative for the future, noting that as a deficiency.
Is it ever an option to lower the road?
Potentially. So you run into concern with utilities when you do that. I don't think that's a big concern. What this one is.
Flooding may be an issue there too.
You have to check floodplain and consider that.
The abutments.
The abutments, because you don't want to dig against them too far. And the other consideration, that location is the road bridge over the river just beyond. You'd want to make sure that you don't alter the approach to that, because that's kind of a fixed elevation. You can't do anything with that structure. But yes, you can generally.
Would raising the bridge, how would raising the bridge affect the timeline for the project?
I don't believe it. I don't believe it would. It's a good question. I don't think it ultimately would affect the timeline. Let's see. Oh, I should have colored these. That was silly. So as we talked about the bridge, there are these fun little elevations that were put together by WSP with the inspections. And these provide the baseline data of the structures and these souvenirs. No, there's sets of two. One of them is one of them is Gun Road, the other one's Shelby's.
Okay.
Just get close.
Yeah. no
Mark,
worries.
if you take one, you can take this one.
And I can send PDFs too. So we obviously have the two bridges. Those are big part of the consideration. Actually, let me share one other bridge thing. This is fun too. So as I said, we'd be putting a new deck on top of the steel that you see out there. And those would generally be blue lamb timber decks, which is basically boards sandwiched together. That's what's done in these applications with the bike paths, and then they put a waterproof membrane and then they pave on top of that. And that's how they, it's a combination of strength, and honestly, it's pretty light compared to other alternatives for a deck, so you're not putting extra load on. The images on there are representative of treatments you would generally see on a bike facility. Don't interpret this as the design. This is just kind of an illustrative image. So on the right, you have you've got the wood railing system that has a curve on the bottom. You can't pass a sphere of like 3 inches through any of those spans, and it's of an adequate height, I think 54 inches usually, so that somebody can't fall over into the water. That's what you'll see on most of the bridge out there, both of them. But over Gun Road, you'll see something more akin to the picture on the right, or the left, sorry, which is like that fencing that you see, and we've been laughing about this. It's called, I didn't know this until a month ago, but it's called anti-missile fencing. And it's intended to prevent a projectile from striking a vehicle driving. That's what it is. It's actually protection from top down, so that nobody can throw anything at a car or whatever. So it's usually basically a chain link fence. It's a little stronger, but it's the same concept of that open space that is small enough that you can't get anything.
What is that little, do you call it a spur? What is the purpose of that?
The bottom of the wooden,
Oh,
This,
you mentioned it already.
the curve. It's a
Oh,
curve.
the curve.
And again, it's so you can't basically, you want to make sure a toddler can't crawl off the bridge.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Question, so it's probably gonna be 10-foot wide pathway, and the bridges, do you know how wide they are?
I can't remember. I think we asked them to go to 12 with the bridges.
So you can even widen what's there?
You can't. Well, so, right, what you're going to travel on is going to be on a deck.
Okay, so you can make that.
This is your existing steel here, and this will be,
So you have control.
we have some influence there. Yep.
Yeah, right, in terms of the cantilever.
Yep.
I'd say, yeah.
Yep. And ideally, because, you're fenced in and it feels tight and narrow, we'd make it a little wider so you don't feel so constricted when you go through that space.
Thank you.
So the other piece that, or our hydraulics and hydrology team has been working with the bridge team, but also running on their own. So they've been tasked with reviewing the 11 existing culverts and the 2 bridges from a hydraulic standpoint. So what they're looking at is, in a design rain event, can enough water pass through these structures that after we build the path, one of them's not going to wash out. Obviously, they've all been there for a while. We don't have washouts on the existing corridor, but still, we're going to model them to newer precipitation models and see what's going on. Basically, the existing condition modeling is done. It's in review, and the initial finding was that probably 3 to 4 of the culverts don't pass what we call a 10-year storm event. So that's a 10-year recurrence interval on a 10-year storm event. And that's I believe, I'll double check with Ashley, but I believe that's the design storm for a bike path, is the 10-year event. And really, in terms of if you're talking about a road, you're always concerned about, that road could wash out and now an emergency vehicle can't get through or whatever. For the bike path, it's more about protecting the investment, quite frankly. You want to make sure that it's not going to wash out.
Right, and just to add on to that, so in terms of not passing the 10-year storm, that just means that that it somewhat impounds in the upstream condition. So it's not that it's overtopping the roadway or anything in that 10-year event.
Yep.
It's just going over the top of the culvert, but we still are showing a foot or so, or maybe 2 feet in most cases, between where that water level is and the top of the proposed path. So it's not like it's overtopping.
So most likely those are going to have to be rebuilt to meet state standards, you're not sure?
So we're not sure yet. There'll be an alternative analysis that'll explore upsizing because of the hydraulic factor. But in general, the age and material of all of them is probably a concern. So there will be discussion back and forth with Mass DOT about whether or not those culverts are simply replaced as part of the project. I also don't know off the top of the hand how many are drainage and how many are stream.
Not to throw a solid number, but maybe half.
So drainage culverts, we can just put a pipe there. We can take it out, we can put a bigger pipe back, and we can walk away. Easy. If it's a map intermittent stream, now we have to get into what's called stream crossing standards, because when you get into a stream, you're not just dealing with hydraulic capacity, now you're dealing with basically a wildlife factor. You have to have an openness ratio, you have to have a bank full width through there. So
I think there's only 2 that are probably intermittent storm.
Yeah, definitely Potash Brook is one.
Yeah.
And there's one further towards Coleman.
So that'll all be part of the assessment, about wade into, whether or not they should be replaced at this time or they can last another 50 years in their current condition. I just throw 50 out anecdotally.
Potash Brook is the one near Grindstone?
Yes,
Yeah.
and there's the little lake there.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, I think that one has a little bit of an impoundment behind it, right?
It's set a little high.
Yeah.
It's like,
So it's like if you meet the standards, you might drain that, which is actually probably an adverse environmental impact. So sometimes you actually don't comply with the standard because in doing so, you would alter some other characteristics. So
I was going to ask that question. I kind of assumed it was part of the inspection, but if you're increasing flow or making it work, more improved flow or something like that, then you'd have a problem further down the line. I don't know the engineering terms, but you don't want to create a problem somewhere else by improving something higher up.
engineers have to get out of their boxes sometimes and, actually take a look and say, I can't push 30% more flow downstream because there's an even smaller culvert half a mile down, that'll probably wash out if I push all that water at it. So, no, you have to holistically assess these things, for sure.
Okay.
I know that they're, at Grindstone, they're hoping to improve access to some land that they have beyond.
I heard that.
Yeah.
We haven't heard follow-up.
Yeah, they were applying for a grant, and they were hoping to complete that project within a year or so.
Okay, which would be great, because they essentially address their access issue, and then we're scot-free.
Right.
We can
I don't know if it's
explain that
going to
later.
change the hydraulics.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, right, depending on what they put, and if that's downstream of what we're going to do, so it could end up just being...
That is going to be downstream. Yeah.
Okay. So, but fortunately, they'll be there first, so we can react.
Would that affect the culvert that goes under Haas Street, that the Potash Brook goes through?
Potentially.
That's upstream though, right?
Is it upstream?
It flows down from
Grindstone.
replaced towards Grindstone, right? So it's upstream, so it shouldn't affect what has to be done with these, right?
If it's upstream, it shouldn't affect it, yep. So, and then, so those are kind of going discipline by discipline. Those were our bridge and hydraulics folks. The highway side, which is actually what Alex and I do, the survey was completed. It's not as fun a read as those bridge pictures. It's 32 pages of topography and property abutters and things, but, you know, to the committee.
Okay.
Magnifying.
So, as I mentioned before, we have established what we call baseline, which is what we envision the center line alignment of the new path to be. And the way we go about designing these things, we'll build out the profile next, which is the vertical that goes along that center line. And then we'll apply a cross-section to that, which will be the 10-foot wide path, you know, with the, at first, just general grading parameters. And it'll, then the computer modeling will take that and it'll push what we call the corridor down the whole path, and it'll generate a grading scheme. And at that point, we can kind of do the first baseline analysis of, you know, does this construction push us over property lines? Does it create issues at, you know, at critical points? Obviously, we go through iterations and refine that grading and refine the approach and work our way around any of those issues if they do exist. But that's next, and that's coming very soon. That's going to happen over the next couple of weeks, I would assume, based on staffing. So we do have a roll plan over there, which is a 8-foot long plan of the whole route at 200 or 100 scale
100,
with
yeah.
stacked viewports. So it's actually 16 feet long if it was all on one, you know, linear
Wow.
piece of paper.
It's more fun than those.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And we could absolutely unroll it and look at it if folks want to, or we can just give it to you to have for now.
I'd love to unroll it. I don't know if our table's big.
Yeah, well, I envisioned the other table, and it's not here right now.
Yeah.
We tried to get a circular piece of paper, but that didn't work.
But, yeah, that's right. This, I mean, this plan can be a segue into questions too.
So is that this?
So, it's simplified. Yeah, that's got more detail right now in terms of, and that's all existing condition. You know, we haven't done much design, so really the only thing on here is our baseline, but, you know, this will get built out with our proposed conditions.
It kind of gives some context with street names and intersections and whatnot, so we can try and do this.
We find on a really long project like this one,
And then over there.
you have to work with a big unwieldy piece of paper in meetings because it's very difficult to find which one of 32 pages, you know, someone's property is. No, just stacked views.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, so you're at Sheldon's, where Aaron's hand is there,
Yep.
come down to this point, and then start back down
back
at that
over
bottom
there.
left,
Oh,
work our way back. So that's the full corridor.
Yep, left to right, left to right.
So it shows our preliminary baseline, which is all the numbers here, each one referring to 100 feet. And then we're showing property lines, town right-of-way, street names, just to give maybe a little context, but
It's kind of just
it's definitely a pared-down version of the survey plans, just to
Can I
make it
ask
more readable.
some questions?
Absolutely.
So one of the issues we've talked about before here, as well as with you, is parking. So one of the issues, Gun Road, Coleman Road, and East Road, and then near Sheldon's, is where we can do parking. I briefly talked about to you whether we can purchase a piece of land to do
Yeah.
parking, and so I don't know specifics of, I know these are houses, but I don't know if this is being used, for example, if we purchasing something there, or at the other end.
Yeah, we looked, I mean, we just out of our own curiosity.
Yeah.
There's definitely a surface water here
Yeah.
on this
That's right.
particular
Yeah.
lot. But whether there's, you know, a willingness by the owner and land here and a potential access, I'm not sure. You know, I would expect a higher utilization once the path's built
Yeah.
out. But you do have your shoulder parking here,
Yeah.
and this will no longer be a trailhead. You know, it's an access, but it's a through.
And
So
I don't know if you can do if you can do angle parking, get some more parking
potentially
spaces.
build out a little bit, just to, you know, but
I'm at the big one.
I wouldn't necessarily expect an increase in parking demand here, because this is a through, it's not a turn. People like to park at the end, and then ride as far as they can and ride back to where they started, you know. If you park here, it's which way are you going? And then we just know, practically speaking, that the biggest challenge is going to be the fact that
It's
everybody's going
right-
to want to
yeah,
park.
so that's right here.
I've been.
At the private parking,
Yeah.
the business at the
Yeah.
end.
Sheldon.
Yeah, and that
Okay.
needs to be considered and thought
Yeah, it's
about.
always
And,
wet.
You know, obviously, that's not going to be an allowed use, so,
Yeah.
but it's going to be a demand. So how do we deal with that? And I feel like that's the biggest parking-related issue and concern to try to solve.
Well, there's a-
Unless there's specific concerns, yeah.
Yeah, there's an existing lot there, so not only would it would be a terminus, but there's a lot, so it makes perfect sense to be drawn to it. But I also, I like the idea of Coleman Road, partially because it's closest to commercial space too. It feels like you're not far off the beaten path, whereas if you go closer towards where Gun Roads intersects with Fletcher's Farms, I feel like there may be street access there, but if you try to jam parking in there, I feel like you have to go 1 or 2 minutes off a major road through a residential area. I feel like you are discouraged to send additional cars towards a rural area.
I
like
wouldn't
that.
want to encourage traffic into an area that isn't used to that. You know what I
Right.
mean? I agree Coleman is
So-
right off from a commercial area.
Yeah, so while it's not a
Historic
terminus,
use
it,
now.
it may be the next best alternative, but I can't talk myself into any other space that would work better, really, other than Sheldon's, but not the Sheldon's lot, something around or adjacent to.
Yep.
I
mean, that,
It's a tricky one.
you know, Brickyard Road there is obviously pretty unique.
Yeah.
But there's probably room on the sides of the road to at least do something like Coleman Road at a bare minimum, you know,
Yeah.
because you're obviously going to say, you cannot park in Sheldon's for using the trail, and he's going to say it, and he's going to threaten towing for those types of things. So you got to give people something
Right,
to
yeah.
use there to help absorb that, but.
Yeah.
My other question related to a lot of places there, when you cross the road, there's access to the bikes to get from the road to there. And the one that's, looks like it could be tricky is Gun Road. And if you could just keep that in mind I don't expect an answer, but keep
Yeah.
that in mind about if we can make that work and how you do it.
Yep, I think, you know, we'll have to do a little bit of studying around that, you know, the path's gonna be up pretty high, and the points where it may be accessible are likely gonna be off private property, so, you know, do you just simply decide it's not actually an access point, or do you try to do something? The interesting thing is, I'm sorry, if you're heading out towards, heading in the Sheldon's direction, when you get over those bridges, the right-of-way gets up pretty close, actually it butts with the railroad right-of-way, and then the Fletchers have a driveway that goes into their farm area, and so there's a lot of potential there, quite frankly, if we decide we want another kind of midpoint, you know, ability to pull off even and get on the
So
trail.
one of the things I don't know is the land on the far side is APR land, so that's a mess to do anything there.
Correct.
I don't think it's APR on this side, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't,
Check that.
well,
'Cause
the initial question would be, I'm not sure,
who owns it?
I think the town's right-of-way abuts the railroad
Okay,
in that
makes sense.
section, meaning there would be no land there that was not controlled by the town in this case.
So that's easy, then it's an easy access, because
Yep.
it's actually not
Oh,
much
wow.
of a rise at all.
Look at that.
Is there,
Hold it right to it. You're
has there
good.
been no other discussion about the public safety complex? Is that, I'll take that as a no.
I don't.
Just because the
That's
site,
actually-
where that thing lands, could or could not be an opportunity. I don't know what's under
Somewhere
consideration.
I
as
heard the
possible.
one near Heritage on Clark Road.
There's 3 lots there.
Yeah, I heard that, and that's close
Yeah.
to East Street, for example. So
Yeah.
I think we should keep that in mind as,
I know they're thinking about putting a senior center in the middle one.
Well, that's a senior center, yeah, okay.
no, but I recall reading that one of those parcels on Clark is a candidate.
Actually, I don't know. So there is parking at the public library and Conan Park, and that's not too far from the East Street,
Yep.
just to keep in mind.
And, you know, there's well, we call it in our profession scope creep, because you start getting away from things and it always takes more effort. But whether it could be incorporated as part of this project or as a follow-up town exercise under like a Complete Streets grant program or something, you know, if you have available parking nearby, you know, and this is a project that simply implements like a 10-foot side path or something between that parking and the path, you know, like that's something that's very easy to find funding for from the state.
Renovation of that section of East Street is on the agenda with TIP and the state process, and I know they're starting that planning process.
Okay, so they'll
Will
definitely,
fit in.
yeah, I think the VHB is working on that.
And they'll push for some sort of like accommodation.
They will, but it might be smart to push for something
Yeah.
enhanced in that stretch because, that's a perfect opportunity to leverage existing parking, underutilized parking.
Who would we talk to?
Ed is the first person, and actually, select board.
So I did happen to open right to the Fletcher parcel there, and it's the town right away of Gun Road abutted directly to.
Oh, so that's an easy access.
So that's an easy access point and a potential for something to be evaluated.
So that's probably
Fletcher's.
500, 800 yards down from the river itself, the bridge. The
Yeah,
river.
so
it's-
you would likely avoid,
Yeah, then
the bridge
other
itself.
construction.
and try to maybe come down here with some
And it's
parking.
pretty flat, so it's easy.
So that's an interesting opportunity to explore.
So how much do you think the existing bed is going to be raised from when you do this construction, other than the bridges?
So there is DEP guidance. Basically, when you deal with rails to trails projects, there's DEP guidance that says you should presume that all the existing in situ material is lightly contaminated. The caveat is if there's any actual reportable releases, you assume more than lightly contaminated. But there's no reported releases mapped with DEP in this section, so we're on the presumption of lightly contaminated. So the best management practice then is to build up and not remove material from site. You can push it around a little bit, if there's a gully here and you can move some. But I guess the rule or if we're not going to remove any material from site, we would build the pathway up by the amount of the construction, which would
Probably
be
a foot.
probably
8 inches of gravel.
rule of thumb, a foot.
Okay, that shouldn't be a problem.
What happens to rails and ties?
They're gonna take them, there'll be a pay item, the contractor will move them. The ties will go to wherever, yes, somewhere in the center of the country, and the steel will probably become salvaged. That honestly is a bit of an offset cost, because they could just sell it for it to be melted back down, so.
The railway is going to take care of those two things?
The Mass DOT, the project.
Mass DOT,
Yep.
okay.
Yes, that
Well, the
would be
railways
included.
no longer obligated, they're out of the picture. So, but that's an eligible project cost with Mass DOT.
Speaking of elevation, I'm just curious. I'm picturing in Northampton, Hadley, heading north, there's areas where the path strays a little bit from where the rail line essentially ran straight through. Now you can kind of see where it was is underwater or something is kind of developed around it. If you use that system, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but if it runs the corridor through and you see that what it recommends does tiptoe on private property or something, do you have then the flexibility to add or change elevation to go around sensitive areas like that?
Yep.
Yeah, both horizontal, so we can move the alignment, and also vertical.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, and we can, in certain sections, we'll probably start with a side slope of 3 to 1. That's just normal practice. It's easy to mow. It's considered recoverable if you end up going down it. But if you get in areas where your grading's just going too far, you can tighten that up and put up railings and things to protect people from going off the trail in those areas, so.
There's a few areas.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Railing requirements, like if you have more of a, 8 foot, 10 foot, something like that, it tells you you gotta have a run up railing.
It tends to be the steepness of the side slope and
Okay.
what's below. If there's
And-
water.
and the height.
And the height does matter, but if there's water at the bottom, then you almost always want a railing because, you don't want to end up in the water.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's criteria and they're not warrants. Kind of are.
Yeah.
There's criteria.
They're not called warrants, they're called warrants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, so parking and access from the streets are the things that came up for me.
And I would absolutely say in our next pass here, the grading will go in, and then the next look after that will be, what are those access points, and that's all, that stuff that's great to get public input on, which I know is the next thing we're going to talk about, and then that's something Mass DOT is going to want to talk about a lot when we get to their first review, which is called the 10% over the shoulder review.
It's something that I want to bring up to the committee as a whole, but make you aware of if it's okay. So the issue of how to manage e-bikes, I've been doing a little exploration on that. So today I spoke with Mass Bike and their executive, and he suggests you speak to Lexington, has probably done the most on this. But right now, class 1 and 2 e-bikes, which are the slower ones that are either no pedal assist or pedal assist under 20 miles an hour, are considered bikes in the state for general use. Class 3 goes up to 32 miles an hour, is not considered a bike. But that doesn't necessarily cross over exactly what bike trails are doing with it. So there's no consistent policy, as best sounds like. In speaking with the person from Mass Bike, he said, no one's really set up anything. There's no policy. The idea of setting up a speed limit, since people who are on their own power can go 35 miles an hour, it's probably better than trying to say you can't have a Class 3 bike and try to look at a bike and say who does or doesn't. But the expectation there is there's no way the police is ever going to be able to, put them in a position where they have to enforce that. So it's sort of a mixed blessing.
There's questions of even there's no legal precedent for it. And the way that speed limits are set on the road is very prescribed. So there's really...
So the issue of requesting it or posting it, and he also suggests if we do this, there should be a regional discussion of making sure East Hampton, Northampton, Westfield is in that discussion, and we don't have to make a final decision. But but I think e-bikes are going to be there. We just got to figure out how to.
Yeah, it's a major topic right now, and as a regular user, I see them all the time. There's no police. I've never seen a speed limit on a path in Western Mass, Eastern Mass, anywhere that I've ridden, and so much of it depends on the user as well. I mean, you have very capable users who can pedal bikes super fast and are careless when it comes to dogs and children and walkers, and then you have people on e-bikes that can pass someone very gently and ring a bell and things. So it's a really tricky thing, and I also don't know how. I mean, I think it will probably be well above us. It'll be Mass Bike and other organizations who will have to come to some policy, but I don't know how anything would be communicated or policed, if at all.
So I just want to lay it out for you to think about it and for us to think about it.
One of the advantages or silver linings to, like I expressed before, the DOT process is going to be a little painful for all of us just in the timing of implementation, but there's time for this to catch up, because I do think it's a hot topic. And it's funny, you forwarded me some information 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I think it was that day or the day before I'd just come back from a meeting in Northampton where that was one of our topics when we walked the Northampton Bikeway to talk about some stuff there, and that came up, as somebody blew by us.
Well, how does Northampton and East Hampton deal with that?
So that's what
motorized vehicles.
They're not yet, and they know it's a problem. So I just think, fortunately for Southampton, I think the conversation's going to be well underway.
But an e-bike rider could pedal and not be using it as an e-bike. Yeah.
So I think we can't exclude them. It's the reality. I don't think we can exclude them, so we've got to figure out how to, if we need to do anything, or just hope people are courteous.
Right.
But who's going to monitor it anyway?
Put up friendly signs.
I'm actually not opposed to courtesy. Like, there are signs that say signal when passing, or anything that kind of assists people who are not on bikes or not expecting someone who will pass your elbow super fast. And we can publish all those things, but in the end, you're not going to be able to issue tickets. You're not going to be able to catch anyone who has a throttle instead of pedals, and people can really use them.
And who's going to be there to monitor it?
I don't think anyone is in any town, and so that's it's a mixed blessing, because I ride it so much. I like not being bothered, but I also realize sometimes I go pretty quick and I pedal, and sometimes I'm past, like I'm barely moving. I don't so much mind it, but for someone who's walking with kids or a dog, it's an uncomfortable situation, and I think the best thing you do is communicate, but there's really nothing more than that. I've never seen consequences. That's why it's a hot debate right now.
Time for us to think about it. So.
And then just with the courtesy signs, though, like this is one of the, we always joke, put a sign up, because on the road signs don't do anything. But I actually think on bike paths that they do help, because one of the users you're hoping to attract to this facility is people who don't ride their bikes very often, right? And they just don't understand.
And kids.
And they just don't necessarily even understand the proper way to conduct themselves, as a rider on that path. So, there's a lot of merit to including those types of things. And if you get a lot of people doing the right thing, it at least drowns out the few people that aren't. So. Any other questions?
At the very highest level, could you walk us through what happens over the next, I don't know, 6 to 12 months?
6 to 12
like
months.
At a very, very high level.
6 to 12 months. So I would hope to have Mass DOT Project Review Committee approval by this winter, meaning the state now recognizes it as a valid project that needs to start moving forward. We will be at a point when we get that approval where we will essentially have their 10% design requirements satisfied. And so we will then be able to request a meeting with district staff to sit down, look at a plan like this, just with more detail on it, and go through access locations, the typical section for the path. You know, is it 10 feet wide? Is it this? Is it that? Identify the challenge spots. You know, maybe we got a little right-of-way issue here. Maybe we've got a culvert issue here. All those types of baseline considerations. So I would hope that within 4 to 6 months, we're doing that. Recognized and in front of them talking about the project basics. Once we clear the 10% hurdle, we're clear to begin preparing the 25% design package, which is the first formal submittal to them. So, you know, in the 6 to 12 month range, I hope to be really bearing down and getting close to making that submission. I mentioned it last time, the 25% submission to Mass DOT is pretty critical, and it's really more like a 60% design level. But my sense is once you clear that 25% design review and you have your formal design public hearing through Mass DOT, the basics of the project are ironed out. You're basically on a program schedule at that point, you know, with your design iterations and your review durations. You know when your permitting is going to occur. All those things are more set in stone. The pushes or the challenge is always getting everybody corralled to get through that 10%, to get through that 25%. After that, it gets very formulaic in terms of scheduled deliverables and things. So my hope is that a year from now, we're in the chute. You know, we're at that 25 and we're moving forward with earnest.
So you think it's going to take a full year for the 25%?
I hope it doesn't.
Okay.
But I don't want to tell you.
Gotcha.
I don't want to tell you better.
So, when I looked at paperwork, it looked like they were potentially talking about 2027 build, the money available for building. Is that what you're...
I don't have an update lately.
Okay.
I know this project does have a strong proponent internally at DOT for it to be basically program. They call that programmed.
Okay.
That's when it actually gets funding assigned. And I know there's a very strong proponent at DOT that wants to see it as early as it can, and hopefully, and he does tend to make things work, so I'm optimistic that he can keep it moving. But it is going to be a larger dollar figure because of the bridges, and the larger projects sometimes get programmed a little further out because it'll be a big chunk of the region's money for that given fiscal year. So smaller jobs, sometimes you just rush and get them designed, and then something else falls off and they slide it in, but the big projects tend to have to fit where they are because they kind of build the rest of the funding program around them. So,
yeah, I was curious too, if and when the design is wrapped up, everyone approves, signs off, is there a stale period between design completion and start of construction, or is it a relatively quick jump through the queue?
It's happened.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah,
it's happened.
a lot of times, unfortunately, it's almost they slow down because what happens is, say your fiscal, we'll just say this year, say your fiscal next year, and we're coming up on fiscal this year, they stop looking at your project because there's like 10 jobs that are like crashing into the finish line that they have to pay attention to, because if they don't get those jobs out to bid in that fiscal year, the federal government takes the money back and it disappears, you know. So unfortunately, even if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're beating your schedule, you almost get slowed down by the, you know, collective massive projects that are in front of you. So
Okay.
I've asked this before, more from private, but this is partly so other people. At this point, next Mass Trail cycle has to be submitted in February. I'm assuming we have to do the one more year, and we hope that that's probably adequate, but we don't know 100%. Is that?
yeah, I believe, you know, we're working on, we basically worked through the initial authorization. There's the next one that came in.
It's June of 2024.
Yeah, and then we'll likely need one more.
And that's going to be lower than, probably lower, but.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. I don't have all the numbers off the top of my head right now.
Thank you.
And some of that will depend, you know, things like the Gun Road Bridge. Do we decide that we're going to basically redesign that span so cars can get under it? Okay, that's something we weren't anticipating coming in, you know. But that's all of the things that will sort out between the 10 and the 25%.
Okay.
talk about
Meeting?
public outreach?
So I know that the committee would like to do a more formal public engagement. I think it's a good idea. I think that DOT will appreciate it being done. I think once we have a plan, we'll share it with them. Whether or not they want to attend and participate is up to them. I will say that any public outreach we do, in the near term, will be in addition to what MassDOT's going to do. So again, when we get to that 25%, we're going to do a formal design public hearing, which is a very choreographed thing. I'll end up giving a presentation. They'll read very specific right-of-way legal language, and then there'll be question and answer with the public, but it is in that more formal, public hearing type setting. So what I would envision the committee trying to do is something a little less formal. I can still either speak to a board or to a couple slides for, 10 or 15 minutes to lay a background of what's going on. But then I think an early engagement like this is better to have a couple of these out on tables and allow people to come forward and, this is where I live and this is what my concern is, or, this is what I'd like to see in the project. And, basically putting those notes right on a plan with more detail than this, but a similar type of, rolled out with a couple stations. We could have one of our bridge engineers there. Alex and I would be there. And we can just try to get a robust interaction with folks that are interested in the project. That would be my vision. But
So support for that is within the scope of what?
we can handle a public meeting. Yep.
Is October sound like a reasonable time frame for you?
I would think mid to late October, we will be in a good place to be able to, talk about the project in some detail.
Makes sense for committee, I guess.
So I'm just trying to visualize this. So we would just get like the cafetorium at Norris and just invite the town.
Invite the town.
Beat the bushes and try to
We
get
can
a
notify
couple other
abutters.
people in the room.
Yeah, you can definitely directly reach out to the abutters, and then you can post it in every other which normal way.
We have the mailing lists.
And, whoever wants to show out, and
And you'll be able to get maps.
we'll have some maps put together. Again, we can decide on, honestly, I'd rather avoid a PowerPoint in a format like that, because PowerPoints just set a more formal tone. I can have a few boards up and I can still speak for 10 or 15 minutes, but, not so adversarially towards a group of people. And then just welcome everybody forward to really start engaging on specifics.
So the things that come to mind that we need to sort of cover is approximate timeline, just so they get a sense of if it's going to take a while, whether we like it or not.
Yep.
And that we're looking into parking and we're looking into access from the roads onto these sites, bridge safety, general safety issues. That's what comes to mind. And then specific concerns of abutters, as you mentioned.
Yep.
I think that's the primary reason for the meeting.
But also general town support. So we did, Southampton had, 2 weekends ago, Southampton Celebrates, so it's sort of an old homes day, and there was a group of us there with some maps and stuff,
nice.
and just sort of making people aware, and so that we're trying to do that, and as a friends group, trying to get the word out there. There's a website. Do you know where, I don't know if that's been shared. There's a website about this, so we can,
Great.
I'll send you
My
link.
friends were coming back, which
Yeah,
is
they're
excellent.
back,
So-
and there's a website.
Yeah.
And all that's good for us to project out to DOT and say the town on their own has gone and done these certain outreach programs.
And I can send you an email just
Yeah.
summarizing that, so it's easy
They'll,
to pass.
they'll,
They'll really appreciate
they'll
it.
appreciate that. And I'll let Linda Walsh, who's the PM, know we're discussing an October meeting, just to,
Well, since this is already almost September, could we just tentatively set an October date and publish it or anything? Just say, okay, October 15th or whatever, because this is almost September.
We may have to reserve the room.
Yeah.
yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah, is there anything that we, either us as the committee or you on your end, need to accomplish before being comfortable with something like that, or are you pretty ready to go?
I'd like to, what we're going to accomplish, I hope over the next couple of weeks, would be basically sufficient to have that meeting where we have a fairly basic understanding of potential impacts, based on what we want to do.
Could you let us know a couple days and then we'll work with the town to see what's, does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, we'll want to look into the logistics. Obviously, I've never reserved the Norris Auditorium before, obviously, so we can look into things like that. I think it's something we've been talking about for a long time. I think the town is excited, at least from the feeling that I get. But I think also there's no need to rush if there's more information pending that will be helpful to have nailed down before that date. So to me, October 15th versus November 1st, it doesn't make a difference, but either way.
But also, if you're planning on having it at the Norris, we need to find out what nights they have.
Right.
Things scheduled.
I mean, I'm always going to ask for more time, you know? But the reality is, the state we're at, like, we're going to do more if we let more time elapse. And, you know, if it's November 1st or 15th, you know, I can say we will have more design work done. You know what I mean? Like, so we'll be more sure on certain things. And in the context of that 6 to 10, 12-month projection, you know, we're well within that framework, even if we push off a little bit. So I could be ready in October. I'd probably be more ready in November. Probably give you folks a little more time to figure the logistics out too, just with locally. So
Yes. How much,
Halloween. We don't want to have it on Halloween.
how much choreography goes into planning something like this?
Probably just me sweating at my desk for a couple of days, thinking about what we're going to say, and
In terms of choreographing, I used to be a management consultant in a previous life. It's been a long time, but I do remember that these things sometimes need to be choreographed, even if you end up improvising in the end.
Oh, yeah.
But in terms of, you know, what we bring, in terms of supporting, or you bring for support materials, how really concretely, how we get people, how we invite people to give their input, how we collate the, you know, all that.
Yep.
I've never done one of these.
I've done a few design charrettes, we would typically call them, or design workshops. You know, you definitely have to use large-scale mapping like this. If you try to bring 30 plan sheets in, nobody knows what they're looking at. You don't even know what you're looking at halfway through the meeting because you flip things around so many times. You know, so there's definitely things to consider. Frankly, it's usually a challenge. It's a worthwhile challenge, but it's usually a challenge. And most people are not adept at reading a plan, even a large format one. So you end up, you know, certain people, you've got to walk through different things. I would probably have, you know, I'd probably have a couple of role plans that were purely planometrics like this one, but built out. I would probably have a couple that were draped over aerial imagery, you know, so it looked more like Google Maps because people can find where they are a lot faster with that type of data. You know, we'd likely have some imagery like this on some poster boards that showed, you know, conceptual or illustrative images of what treatments are and what, you know, those types of things. And then we'd probably have like pens and highlighters and honestly welcome people up to like go ahead and write on the plan and, you know, tell us what you know and tell us what your concerns are.
How many type on people would you think of having there?
I mean, probably 4, but it could be more. Yeah.
So would we have a role in that meeting?
I would welcome a role from the committee. You know, I would
Should at least have.
I would think we'd have a couple of stations, and each station I'd like to have a committee member, and you know, as many of the rest of the folks could also just be in the room engaging on the project in general. You know, perhaps there's a third table that's you guys, right? So if people want to just interact on the town level with you as well.
Yeah, we'd have their friends there too.
Exactly. So I think I think all that can be happening because if 100 people show up and I've got 2 plans, it's going to take a long time for everybody to see the plans. So you definitely want some other engagements going on in the room.
I like the idea of having big maps, and I'm also picturing. I'd be happy to do an intro, describe who's on the committee, what the committee's been up to, where to find us for questions afterwards. Then obviously introduce you and let you do a more design-specific conversation. But I can't guess if we would have 2 people or a dozen people or 100 people, whether or not we need a microphone. It's going to be a bit of a wild card. So it'll be interesting, but at least probably the most substantial event. And I think we've broadcasted as broadly as possible that is in fact a path-specific meeting. And if you really have your 2 cents or concern about your property, this is the ideal time to gain all the information you can. So I do hope for a decent turnout, but I think the more presence we have, the better. And
And involve the friends group too?
of course, yep. Just get everyone there, get all their faces out to anyone who's interested, and yeah, make it very real.
And figure how to take up, especially butters' concerns, and make sure that doesn't get lost when they raise a concern, and just figure out a mechanism that works for you guys.
Yeah, who then is responsible for
Yeah, I mean,
collating and assimilating?
we would absolutely take all the data, we would, scan it, digitize it, and provide it to, you guys and Randall and Ed. But we would likely, do something like a spreadsheet database that had the property number and, what the concern was, because as we go through that design iteration, at 25 would be the design coming after that. We'd use that, and, are there things that are actionable, and can we address those? And because it's so early in the process, one of the important things to set the tone for the evening will be, yeah, there's a design on this plan, but this is not the project's design, this is what we're going to discuss, right? It's very early, we have the ability to make adjustments, and hopefully we can take the actionable input and make those adjustments in that first design iteration.
You almost want a card or a piece of paper for when someone comes up and has concerns, so, and then keep them all in one place.
You could potentially handle it that way as well.
Or some version.
I like the first half of November more than I like the middle of October. Or, frankly, into the, the second or third week of January even.
Yeah, we're not going to be
These things
ahead.
take time.
They do, but
And we have a friends group which meets once a month typically.
Yeah.
So just corralling everybody, just a little bit of a thing.
Yeah. Well, I think January is a little bit too late. And there is some enthusiasm or interest right now, and almost impatience. And so I would say we wouldn't want people to wait too long.
Yeah, and we need time to advertise.
I always look at the
wait afterwards.
These things,
That's right.
aside from, one thing we're trying to do here is get town input, but we have to remember we're also branding the project. So we want to make sure, this kind of thing needs to be done right. It either makes the project look good and serious, or
There's a
God
dead
forbid.
time
But we need
between
time to
Thanksgiving
advertise.
and New Year's, so you gotta
Right,
either
yeah.
do it before or
Yeah, that's
after, I
right.
think. And I would tend to go for before.
Then I'd say the first half of November would be my vote, not push to October.
So if you could send us some dates, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll check my calendar tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, at the very least,
It also
also.
depends on what's happening in the school.
Yeah, and I don't know how to do that, but I made a star here. Look into how to reserve it, how to,
When
have.
is November break? Isn't there usually a November break? It's usually like
It's
after
It's right before Thanksgiving.
Right before, or right, did
It's
it get the
like
week
when-
after, or no? Was it just a few days?
I just learned the
Just
first
Wednesday to
One
Sunday.
thing at a time.
You mean they're coming back?
We're going back.
I'm in a rush.
next week, guys.
I'm not into November yet, personally.
With evening meetings, the weekday evening meetings, not a
Yeah.
problem for the school,
Yeah,
as long as it's not booked for other reason.
yeah, I can come up with a few dates and then
We need to put some signs out and
Oh,
put
yeah.
on a website and I like
do all
we
that
gotta-
stuff, so.
So
Right, I'll get you some
anytime.
dates, you can check then with town and school, and then we can settle on a date, and then we can all scramble to make the date happen.
So get the word out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
That's great, thank you.
Yep.
For being
you,
willing to do
yeah.
that, it's a big deal for us.
Do you need anything else from us, I guess, is the next,
Probably not right now. I mean, we'll obviously get a lot of input heading into, the meeting in November. But, we'll be able to discuss that more thoroughly in a month or so. I would probably, what is August? So I'd probably come to the October meeting so we could discuss the November meeting.
That would be great.
That'd be my next plan. Yeah.
When's our next Friends meeting? Anybody know?
I do not know.
You're our liaison.
Good.
Damn.
You gotta roll this
You gotta take
back.
There's
the
a
mirror out.
website,
and
right?
ask the
Saying on the
question again.
website, right?
I don't think I've posted it yet.
And then as far as invoicing goes, no issues with invoicing or using fund? Okay.
No,
Just perfect.
we're on track with all that. so-
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. That's all I
I've been
have.
staying out of that, I'm
Mark,
assuming
do
you
you
don't
have,
events.
I'm sorry, do you have the piece of paper that we put out on the table? I think it had
actually,
the
no.
next meeting on there. that next Friends meeting.
Could be under this map, so
I don't
it's
think I
paper.
Do they have a website?
Yes.
Yeah, one of those.
I don't think it's not on there because I don't think we have one scheduled.
Yeah, if they're, I mean, we're gonna release.
So these are what we handed out at the committee.
Okay.
At the Celebrate
So
Southampton.
these are, take one, but one was from the Friends of Southampton, one was from us.
Okay.
There's a map on the backside,
Cool.
just to sort of spread the word. If you want one without tape, I can do that.
No, that's okay.
So they're both,
Yep,
this
those
is
are the two.
Friends, yeah.
Yep.
But, that was our attempt to sort of get the word out.
No, it's great.
While we have engineers here, Kristen, do you have questions that you'd like to send directly to those who might know?
My list is pretty
Long? Okay. Well, I'm happy to release them as well, but I just figured I'd give you the opportunity while they were here. But
Well, actually, yes, I do. You said that there were currently 2 culverts that were based on seasonal water, one near the Grindstone Farm and one near Coleman. But the one that's in my backyard is also a seasonal culvert that goes underneath that has increased in volume this year, particularly because of the rain all year, but also because of construction that's happened further up at the Blueberry Farm and the building, and they put a wider culvert in on the bridge. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't
It's on
offhand.
the north side of
Yes.
Gun Road.
Yes. Yes. It's, I'm the property right next to the railroad bridge, so it's not cars that don't make it under there, it's trucks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
the red
And
house?
that's why there are concrete blocks in my driveway,
Ah.
because the trucks have,
Turn.
yeah. And then they were driving over my neighbor's septic system, so he put rocks. So now they have to back up the hill. But a student project thinks that every time they change the satellites, that's when we get more truck traffic. But at the end of the property is where the seasonal stream is going on. There is a culvert there.
Okay.
But there's standing water, because there's like a gully at that point, where it's really steep, and then and it comes back up, but there's water here, and then there's water coming down.
Okay. So this is north of Gun Road,
Yeah,
and there's a culvert back there.
it's north and east, right?
Okay.
Just gonna,
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah, we-
Yes, it is northeast.
I don't know offhand which ones are considered river streams or not, and which ones we thought were hydraulic.
It used to be that it was only in the spring, but in the last 5-6 years, that the water back there that's coming down the hill is usually present all year.
So it's trending towards a perennial stream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can she show
Okay.
us?
Not a lot,
I don't know what
it
her
sort of
property is.
trickles and stuff,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
definitely flows more, but that's why there's a
Sorry, is it flowing to your property or away from your property?
I'm sorry, what? No, it's flowing from the top of the hill.
Down towards the river.
You want flowing.
Can you show us here?
I think you're right here, as far as I know.
I
And
have
these-
bifocals things.
So
Riverdale Road.
this is the river. This is under the bridge.
By the way. Sorry, I'm
Oh, yeah.
English teacher.
You can circle it if you want.
That's right.
I
feel better if you ever read that.
Yeah, there's
Road down
something right weird there. So this is Gun Road, so this is the bridge right here.
Yep.
And I must be 118, but
Oh.
No, that's the height.
Yeah, because
Oh,
they're.
yeah.
And then-
But I'm right here.
This is just
My house is
like,
right
yeah.
here. I'm next to the
There you go.
giant tree.
Yeah, okay.
Wait, is your property Biancuso?
Yes.
So this is the
He's
railroad.
deceased,
That's the
so
road.
we can just put, you know.
Going up the hill?
So the
Like right
culvert,
after. You go under
the
the
yard
tunnel?
back here, the river, the little stream is flowing from up
Excuse me,
here
but I
and
know
flowing down
the
through
bricks.
here
I
and
know
into
the
the
cement blocks and stuff.
wetlands over here.
Which
I
now
don't
makes
know
sense.
So it
where
goes
the
up.
end is on
Sneak
there.
on
Can you imagine?
There is currently a culvert there.
Stopping in there.
Is that
I believe it. yeah.
This is, oh, the sheet 24. 24.
That's Gun Road.
Yeah, so,
And that's the river.
yes, Manning River, and road comes over.
Right, and on this side, this is all open space over here, but it's wet, real close to the railroad on the bottom side. It's very
I
wet
live
over
up,
there.
we live up, we're the sheep farm.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that back area is all wet.
love the sheep, glad they're back. Did he like Italy? Sorry, we'll so this is wetlands, right close to the railroad tracks, but the water is coming from up the hill.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so this must be it then.
Because the Blueberry Farm put in a little bridge to get to their house.
Yeah, they have a culvert.
Yeah, and since that's been put in, which is, it's a wider culvert that's there, it has increased the flow of the water coming from the mountain, I think the hill, whatever we are. The bump, the land bump we
Yeah,
are.
as the Concom called it, it's like the Rolls Royce of culverts.
Yes.
It's like a very.
Oh, their culvert. yes.
Their culvert, yeah,
okay,
from
yeah.
their
Yeah, not-
driveway,
not
yeah,
this
it's a
And their-
big
and
culvert.
But their water, but now more water is coming through it, so this, that used to be a seasonal stream that would dry up in the summer and then would show up in the spring, is now pretty much flowing all year.
Well, I'm
Not
sure us
super
building a
wet.
house didn't help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most intermittent streams
I'll admit that.
This is the comment discussion
Yeah.
before, right? So the upstream culvert got upsized. And
Yeah.
now the downstream culvert is seeing conditions
Yeah.
that she didn't experience before,
Yeah.
Yes.
right?
It
So
needs to be
it's-
addressed.
Intermittent streams aren't intermittent anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
it
don't
looks
know.
like this stream, and this is a smaller piece of property, and it's got to be impacting that piece of property a lot.
Well, so there's how's it go? My house is here, my neighbor's house is here, and then the former Pipperis's house, but that was separated from the Blueberry Farm. Our three houses are right next to each other. We all butt up to the back of the Blueberry Farm property.
Right.
So it's their backyard, my next door neighbors, it's their backyard.
So if you can identify a feature that might be beneficial to an abutter or a private residence, I mean, I'm ignorantly saying, I don't know if it has a major effect on this project. I don't know if that's scope creep or not, but would you consider things that would be a win-win or beneficial to abutters if something like that is a identified issue next door? Depending on maybe how major it is.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if we're talking about like that culvert and what it's doing and, you know, water ponding or not ponding, like, you know, for me anyway, it could be a justification to maybe replace that one with a different structure if we think that would improve the situation.
So there's two parts, sorry. That's one part of this. The second part of this is that there's also a gully that runs there. That's where the tracks are really high. And there's it's a gully.
Yep.
I don't know, somebody said it used to be part of the canals, but I don't know if that's true.
Gully under the track or?
No, right next to the track. It's kind of, it's
A dip
a
between-
gully.
So
Yeah,
flowing
between the
water,
yard and the track.
property. is
It's
very
not
close
the
to
whole
track.
length of the side of my yard, it's only towards the back tail of the yard.
Okay.
But it dips off and it's where the land separates, there's a gully. That is also filled seasonally, but now again with this year, it's got water now. I'm growing a mosquito pond back
Very
there.
nice,
Like
yes.
here, is it,
It's towards, it flows
So it
into
does
here.
drain there,
These
okay.
two meet, and when this gets high enough, it will then flow through that pipe as
So
well.
this pipe's up high.
Yeah, most of the time, this water is standing,
It's just sitting.
but when it's winter or spring and it gets high enough, it will go in there.
Okay. So we got a perched culvert.
Sorry?
It's a perched culvert.
Perch colors of high, that's what that means.
So is that just for, they can exist, but it's also can be changed? Is that the,
I'm sorry, in regards to,
a perch culvert?
Yeah.
So it could be redone lower or,
Put the
but
indoor-
if,
put the
it doesn't
indoor
always
culvert.
have to be, is that?
yeah.
If it
Yeah.
doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, if it were, so this, my guess is, this got delineated. I have to look at their technical notes to know what they considered this. But they clearly delineated a channel here. And they may be calling this bank, which would mean that that's
Yeah,
actually a
there's
stream
two
now.
steep banks.
And so, in that case, you know, you would want to remove that perched because nothing can really pass through it, you know?
So that one wasn't when you were talking, I just wanted to point that out, that
Okay.
that one has a, and then my second question is, I don't think right now the land on that narrow strip here is 10 feet wide.
That's-
So
there's
if
a
they,
chance.
and because of the, that's a, okay.
There's always, rails to trails projects always end up with that issue in some points where, whether through erosion over time or whatever, you know, that top section's not actually as wide as we need it. And it always seems to happen at the steep parts where we don't have to chase the slope the farthest. So, no, that's when I talk about grading and maybe trying to do slopes with railings or maybe short walls or those are all things we have to work with to get that section through. Because it's not just 10 feet, it's a 10 feet and then it's a 2-foot shoulder on either side and then the railing. So a 10-foot path is really a 14-foot path plus railings. And if you're only got 8 feet on your top section now, we got a lot of work to do.
And it drops off even steeper on the
On the other side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So, and when there's,
It's just in the
when there's,
convenient spot right there.
right, and when there's wet down here, it's nothing we can fill onto, you know, so it just, it's a challenge.
Okay.
These are the things that I would, you know, the point of design I'd like to be at in November when you talk to people is knowing where, you know, okay, all of a sudden we're grading into here, right? Like, let's talk, we could talk to you about that now because you abut that area and we can get more perspective on that, so.
Okay.
It's so good you came.
So you really
Okay.
you'll build in essentially like one-off issues or like per
Oh, yeah.
property, you know, unique features. Oh, that's good. Okay.
My hope is at the time, you know, we get to the end of this, to the actual bid documents, that, yeah, we have actually thought about all of those incremental issues along the path.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
I have a personal, I'm just really curious, sorry. As an abutter, you're so very close. I mean, are you in general okay with it? And would you desire fencing or like what would make you feel better sleeping at night?
Well, you can't make what would make me feel better. Happen, but yeah, I am very concerned because now the way the trail is, the people who are using the trail right now at this particular part are not people I feel comfortable. The people, they use my yard to cut through, and now being there, like those people there. So that's a little concerning to me, being a single in that house. So I am concerned. I am concerned. I like the tree, so I don't want them taking the tree down. They're not planning on taking the tree down, right? That thing's like a couple hundred years old. Say no, please.
Yeah, I can't
I'd like to say no, but I'm not making any commitments right now.
Big tree.
Sugar maple?
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's like
Is it bottom of the slope?
you can't miss it. It's right next to the railroad tracks. It's I don't know. It has giant things that fall on the ground.
Leaves.
No, not things.
Cones?
No, not cones. Like,
Like a horse chestnut?
but it's not. It's I don't know what it is.
Buckeye?
I've got to go.
Anyhow, we can take a look.
It's
So,
beautiful.
Can I raise a question to the group as a whole? We've
this
had
one-
other abutters who raised this issue of people trespassing from the existing rail bed to their property. Can we as a town post sort of no trespassing off of the trail? Or it may not be effective, but there's no reason we can't do that
You mean now?
now, because they've had at least one other person bring that up.
You know, I thought about that too. The thing is I think that's a fair thing, but I also feel like we shouldn't say, go ahead and use the trail, just stick to it, because it's a dangerous thing. It has rail ties and, you know, we're not really supposed to, I feel like it's not an appropriate place to recreate in general.
But people are.
Right.
People are, so
It's
it's.
just a reality.
It is reality, but I guess I don't know the stance. I agree that we should prohibit and not, you know, anything we can do with trespassing is ideal, but I also worry that if we say like, oh, you know, go ahead, use the path the bridge is right there. You don't want people feeling free to walk across the
Yeah.
bridge. There's not a fence
No,
across
the
the.
railroad had, when it was still in the railroad's possession, they had put tape so people couldn't, because there were sections of rotting wood coming through.
Yeah.
So they had posted so you couldn't go over. No, they didn't put a fence up like they did at Sheldon's, but they
Right,
did put tape up.
We may want to do that for town's sake.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
The folks at Grindstone were very concerned because they had people
Were hunting.
traipsing all over their property, and they hunt.
Yeah.
And they had strangers hunting on their property coming off the railbed.
Was that new since the perk?
There
since
are
the
definitely more
acquisition, or
people,
is it-
yeah, and they say, well, the town owns the land. And so but they don't know, they don't stay on the trail. They would just walk through people's property.
Oh, yeah, that's a frequent thing to see them walking with it. That's always a handy thing to see them walking on the trail with a gun slung over there.
Right.
Yeah, that's.
I'll talk to Ed about what we can do at least.
Yeah, that's just my thought. I definitely want to restrict, I want it to be respected and not allow trespassing, but I also feel like we shouldn't give any kind of indication there's a green light to use the land because I think it's a dangerous time to do that. I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
I know that like when the Conservation Commission has their trails down, they put up signs saying
no
like, no trespassing, you're liable for whatever happens to
Maybe that's what we
you.
have
This
to
is,
do.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
But it's
maybe-
just one at the entrance. It's not like throughout.
Right.
You know, it's just
Yeah.
one sign at the end, wherever people are walking in.
We may have to do it at each road
Yeah.
crossing or whatever. And definitely taping off the Gun Road Bridge actually that is dangerous.
It isn't still taped, I mean, as far as I knew, it was still taped off.
Oh, okay, no, it's been a while.
I should look
It was
when I
the
go
last
home
time we
every
went
time.
up there,
Been at least 9 months.
some time ago. Yeah.
So that's when the public will get to comment on what we want.
You'll have,
Yeah, I'm hoping we have a lot of input like this.
Yeah, if you want to write stuff down and send it to
Absolutely.
to one of us and we can pass it on, so the more concrete it is in writing,
Okay.
it will less likely.
And Mark
to
is the liaison with Ty and Bond.
yep.
We have a designated person.
Do you want me to give you my email, or is that what's easiest for you?
Sure.
Is that okay, or do you want to?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I can.
That was great.
Appreciate you guys
Thank
sticking
you
with us.
so
Yeah,
much.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
A lot of good info we got
Yeah,
tonight.
that's, yeah.
Roll it and
Are you taking this back with you or leaving it over there?
we'll let you guys deal with that. Figure out how to roll it.
I'll blame you.
Roll it up and bring it to the
Well, we got notes on that one now.
forum.
And I'll send, Aaron, I'll send you and Mark the PDFs.
Thank you.
Probably not of this, there's not much on it, but there's more on it, I will, but all this stuff, you know, certainly, and these, so you have.
Okay.
I'll send that out.
Tough to roll with this.
Lord of bigger things.
Maybe we want to say too much
I know, I was surprised I came in, it's just a round table.
Unless there's a fight there, there wouldn't be the, you know what I mean, like, you don't have access.
That's right.
Spreadsheet to start tracking.
Here's the rubber band.
Yeah, yeah. It's a rough draft, it's kind of just ideas at this point, but as long as we know, you know, like parking, we know parking is an issue.
These, Mark,
but it's
Mark, are
also
you gonna
time
bring
for-
those ones home?
I can do that, ask them to send me a
I've not
copy.
made it
so
public,
I'll-
kind of just like a city to incorporate others.
You can hang on here for the letter then.
Well, thanks, Alex.
We should jot it down.
Pass it out to you.
Very helpful.
I think so. Or, I think I
We'll avoid the,
included emails.
18 nomenclature, but
We'll wait until it's being bid and constructed for the 18th.
That's right.
Thank you.
guys.
All right, thanks guys, much
very much.
appreciated.
Be in touch, absolutely.
Thank you.
Stay dry.
Dodge the rain trucks.
Okay.
Thank you.
We gotta approve the minutes.
And update.
I have a thing about the minutes. Well, I don't think you did a great job, but I have a question I'm a little bit confused about. Under the Grindstone Farm and Fletcher Farm paragraph, it says,
It's not accurate. so-
Robert Fletcher will allow a right-of-way off Gun Road at his property, does not think it will be a problem.
Can I suggest specific wording change there.
Yeah, what would you like to change it to?
So, Robert Fletcher will need to maintain the right-of-way off Gun Road to access an isolated portion of his
The
property.
right of way off Gun Road.
Yeah.
To access an isolated portion of his property, period.
To access what?
An isolated portion of his
And
property.
And, okay. Portion of his property?
Yes.
Okay.
Meaning he'll need to go to cross the trail.
He already has a right-of-way,
Yeah.
and he has to maintain that with
Okay.
gates, so because he wants to peak, which is the
Yeah.
other.
And there's a similar situation at Grindstone Farm.
Well, but what's in the minutes is accurate.
Well, wait a minute. He will need to maintain the right of way off Gun Road to access an isolated part of his property.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay,
And
and
then,
not what I had before.
And then, period, he does not think this will be a problem.
Don't put that,
I just
don't need
add
that,
a-
actually.
You probably don't need that.
Okay.
But I was gonna suggest another sentence, which is, he will need
he will need
a gate and requested fencing to protect,
he will need a gate and a what?
and fencing.
And fencing.
And requested fencing to protect his crops.
Okay.
I was gonna ask, do you mean 2 gates?
Yes.
And what kind of fencing?
At a minimum, it did not, he only owns on the far
He will
side,
need
so
a
he
gate
at least
and
needs
fencing
the
to
gate
protect his property.
on the far side. And I think we're talking about, what this discussion is off of Gun Road, that may be just a direct place for people to get onto the, so that will be just, at a minimum, the one on the back side.
Okay, okay.
The details
Yeah,
to
minimum
be,
of 1.
Yeah.
At Grindstone, they will need 2.
2. Okay.
Mark, you said he will
'Cause
need a
it's
gate
their land
and what
landing,
kind of
and
fencing?
it's a right of way.
and I said requested fencing
And requested.
to protect his crops.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's under Fletcher.
Yep.
And what do you want to do for Grants?
We don't need
No,
to
that's
change the
under-
wording.
yeah, that's under
Yeah, we don't need to
Yeah,
change
that's
the wording.
okay.
Okay.
I did have one other question in here. Either I didn't understand what I was supposed to do. So just above the next meeting, it was noted we need a working map of the Greenway. You said Mark will email the committee updated maps. I did not, because I didn't think I was supposed to. So if I said that, I will do that. But I thought I said that I was going to print maps for our public meetings, which I,
That's what I was, it was just in relation to Celebrate Southampton, and
yeah.
obviously we were well mapped.
so.
I'm
so
totally
it's-
lost. I can't
So
hear you.
So the second part of, just above the next meeting, says, it was noted we need
The
a
Mass
working...
Trails Grant or the Friends?
No.
No.
Down
Way
here.
down
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was noted we need a working map of the Greenway, semicolon is fine. Mark will prepare, will prepare maps for public
For Celebrate
presentation.
Southampton.
Force, okay.
And that was,
Mark will prepare maps. Okay, those are great maps you sent, by the way.
I can email those to people, I didn't know that I was on my list of things. I'll try to do that. but-
That's pretty cool.
I think we're using them for a presentation type meeting, and just having tangible things to look at will continue to be valuable, so hold on to those for sure.
yeah, bring them in.
By the way,
Yeah.
speaking
October,
of
November.
maps, I was rummaging around behind my flat files in my office where I never go, and I found all kinds of maps on the poster board. I almost brought them in, but it was pouring.
Yeah, I have
Greenway
mine in the car.
maps?
Greenway.
Oh,
Nice.
good.
So I will bring them.
Okay. I put mine in my car and realized I don't want to take it with me.
Yeah.
I do have one of them in the tube there, if people want to see.
They're not gonna obviate the need for tie and bond, yeah, okay. They're just maps.
Ancient history,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
still should probably have them somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, and I need to make a change to my own minutes. I went to the meeting last night about open meeting laws and all that kind of stuff, and I was not aware, I'm supposed to put members present and members not present. So I'm going to change the minutes to Doric Dodds was not present.
Paul.
And Paul Fergal. Paul Fergal also
I thought he
absent.
was not on my committee anymore.
He still is at the moment.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know, I thought if they weren't present, then they were absent. Makes sense to me, but then you're supposed to list the people who are absent. So I will change that. Okay. I think what I'm going to do then is put Grindstone Farm and then Fletcher Farm and make two, not one heading for the two.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Since
yeah,
you
that's fine, yeah.
have so
Mhm. Clarification,
more
yeah.
to express about the Fletchers. Okay.
So, a couple Did anyone not get a copy of what we printed out for the Celebrate Southampton? Does anyone want a copy?
I'll take a copy. Thank you.
Are those what you emailed us?
No, well, they were floating around. No, these were actually at Celebrate Southampton.
Oh.
Yeah, they're in printed form.
Once we handing out to
thank
to
you.
the
Yeah.
residents,
All right.
citizens.
Thank you. And are we gonna look at this? Is that part of our minutes? Friends Group, right? Oh, Friends Group is next.
Yeah, we don't have to be terribly rigid, but I did include Friends Group just in case there was new news, updates, anything that would be good for us to know. If it's not new news, major accomplishments.
Friends have a website. I'm told I was not there. Friends had a table at Celebrate Southampton. Friends got some names, for our growing mailing list. And I'm sure that the Friends will be happy to be involved in getting the word out for a meeting in November.
I think that went pretty well, actually. Celebrate Southampton. I mean, it was a decent turnout for the entire event. A lot of people came by the tent just to check out the maps, share input. We didn't have anyone who wanted to argue. I was a little disappointed, but it was only positive feedback and people were excited for it.
Yeah, my name was drawn for one of the guests.
And won a prize.
I never win
Inside job.
Yeah, don't say anything.
Stuff the ballot.
But yeah, it went well. I think having increased presence, people seem positive about it. I thought it went well. And so that's where also we got an idea. So this is like half a joke, but half serious. This ideas and concerns list. It's good to keep an eye on concerns, things like parking, etc. But the idea of having like dog waste bags, sponsored folks, any businesses in town who want to have their name visible out there on the path, whatever it may be, definitely great things, especially if sponsorship comes with
Well, I think this is
supporting
great.
funds.
I really do.
Yeah, so I just added it on there, and if anyone else has good ideas or anything related to just general considerations, we'll keep it present.
Maybe we should
Yeah,
put
I hear.
the concerns about trespassing and signage.
Trespassing can go on. It's a heavy hitter.
Are people allowed to walk their dogs if they're nice dogs or?
I'm going to talk to Ed about this issue of safety and, and it was,
It's not our call.
What does Northampton do and East Hampton do?
well, they're finished, right?
I know, but do they allow dogs to-
Yes.
on leashes?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was talking about short term.
So I want
Not
to
yet. No.
propose,
Don't
and
look the other way.
if anything, an expansion of this. We've heard from Kristen today, we've heard about Fletcher's, we've heard about Grindstone. We actually need a master list. There's no question in my mind.
Right.
We need a master list organized numerically by whatever
A
location.
master list of abutters,
Yes.
you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what
And
we were talking about.
And just accumulate over the coming years those concerns, because otherwise they're going to slip through the cracks and we're going to fail our fellow citizens. And they're going to be really angry at us.
So that's why if you send me stuff, I will forward it to
Yeah.
the planner.
So is
I've
there
done
a
that
way-
with the Fletchers and
Yeah,
I've
we
done
got
that.
there
a
a way
list of
to
the
ex-
abutters, right? We got that from the town clerk, right?
We have a mailing list for
Yeah.
voters, so.
So it
So we
seems
turn
we
that
should create
into-
like a master spreadsheet
Yes.
to track
Yeah.
Can
concerns
we
like
just add
in
it to
detail.
Aaron's spreadsheet?
I am totally agnostic. We
Yeah.
just need the information somewhere.
Are you thinking publicly available or
No.
just
No.
our own sheet that's
Absolutely.
actually up to date?
Are we
Okay.
We
depending
just add
on
it to Aaron's.
tie and bond to do that, or do you think we should do that?
No,
I
it
think
should
we
be
should
us.
do it. It should be us and we.
Yeah.
at
Even if it
appropriate-
duplicates what Diane Bond is doing, what's being suggested is that we can't let anything slip by. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
on us as well as a committee to know exactly what concerns are for everybody who's in a butter or otherwise.
I have the list of butters that includes, so there's a couple of owners who own multiple properties. So I will probably make sense to put a list together by property rather than by owner.
Yes.
Because there may be different, so I will try to create a framework,
Like a
Right.
spreadsheet based on, because right
Because
now
even if it's not a
access.
concern from an abutter or an owner, it could be a concern that we discover.
Yeah.
It still goes into the list. It
And
still
so
goes.
it's in an access space, so I have to switch it to probably an Excel or something.
Makes
See how
sense to
do
put
that.
it on an Excel spreadsheet, I think.
I gotta
Is it-
figure
you-
it out.
we can
For now,
also send
'cause
it
we-
for- to
you know,
one another.
If it gets
if we need to.
complicated, we can always dump it from Excel into something more
Yeah.
sophisticated later.
Yeah.
So I gotta figure out how to make that transition from Access to Excel, but I
But I
won't.
think one person should maintain it. If
Yes.
everybody has the ability to add things and,
Yeah.
you know, then you kind of lose
I'm gonna
continuity.
create the structure for it.
Okay.
And then we'll figure out.
Okay.
But I agree, there should be an owner.
It's a
and-
good idea, Mike, I think it's,
Yeah. Well, it just, I mean, it's what Aaron put together, but it's kind of the next
Yeah.
step of it.
Yeah, I
Just so
mean,
we don't.
my idea with
It's a
Excel
great-
is
it's a great idea.
you can add any level of information or columns or, you know, as much detail as necessary, but it was specifically so we weren't forgetting anything. But yeah, it should be,
well, it's two separate things. One is a list of abutters concerns, and the other are more global, like parking, you know,
yeah, yeah,
signage,
Both end.
yeah.
doggy bags.
I figure at the very least, during a presentation, if we do an introduction and we're just say what the committee's been up to before introducing engineers, acknowledging either that we have a list or acknowledging some of the high priority items, just so everyone realizes, okay, they're either, you know, taking information seriously, taking a butter input seriously. They have some of my main concerns already on the list, already being researched, things like that. I think that may
Yeah,
help
you can make a column
quell
with
some
status or
concerns.
something.
Yeah, so at least
And it'll
the-
invite people to mention more.
yeah, bring
Right?
up whatever's on your
Yeah, it
mind.
brings out more.
It may be unique to your property, but we still want to
Yeah.
know about it, and
Yeah.
we'll still add it to the list. And so I think just the idea is good to share.
I mean, it'd be kind of exciting when we know that we have a potential solution for somebody who's got an issue, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's kind of,
Could
Or it's
be-
in the hands of the people who can actually get the,
yeah.
some of these are
Yeah.
engineering
Well,
solutions.
it's
which are
kinda-
beyond us.
You know,
Yeah.
they feel
Yeah.
like they have no control over something in their backyard.
Yeah.
I can understand anxiety. I think it's a good practice.
Okay. Well, at the very least, I'll add some of these items, like trespassing, for example, or potential drainage issues that may even come from a different surface,
Right.
replacing the rail ties. But so then I can share it with the group, and if anyone wants a new format, additional information, multiple tabs, we'll doctor up and make it as
So I was gonna do
useful as
structure
possible.
tied to the mailing list and properties.
Okay. What else? Anything else?
Next meeting?
Yes.
Here's the date roughly.
Talking about the end of September.
Are we doing the fourth Thursday?
We've been pretty consistent with that, so that would be the 21st.
28th.
Or 20th, yeah, I see 28th. September 28th as a penciled in next meeting.
Yeah.
As usual, I will put that on my town government. Yep.
Is there any chance we could do earlier than 7? Or are we meeting at 7 because?
I could. Any opposition or suggestions?
How much earlier?
6:30?
3 in the morning.
6:30?
I mean,
People can make it for 6, we could.
for
do
me,
6.
ideal would be 6, but that's, my schedule. That's my schedule.
And we-
You have the kids at
Afterwards?
home, right?
I come from
Are you
further away
bringing
and I
me
have
dinner?
kids at home. It takes,
Potluck?
So it kind of depends. And
we
maybe
like,
the controlling factor, it's got to work for you.
could we do 6:30?
6:30 is fine with me.
Does everybody want to aim for 6:30?
Sounds good to me.
I'll,
Okay.
Is there any,
28th.
anyone else using this room, I guess, at other times?
Yeah,
Just
I've-
check with Lucy.
It's been hit or miss. I've seen it booked a few times and then had cancellations, and I've seen it wide open other times. So that is a TBD. I'll try to book it early and
We
see
can
if
also meet in the workroom where the
Right,
cookies are.
that's true,
That's
yeah.
a legal place to meet.
Yeah, we don't usually have a full house, so I think we're pretty flexible with location in the building too. So that's true.
I'm out of town on the 28th. I mean, I don't want to, if we need to meet on the 28th, so be it. But I
Okay.
just,
Well,
I
not the
can't.
28th then.
Something I can't change.
Okay.
So
Just wanted to give you a heads
Does
up.
it have to be a Thursday? Can it be Wednesday?
Again,
Or the week
I'm not
before?
trying to make people crazy, just trying to
Yeah,
get
could
full disclosure.
any preference for a week before or a week after?
Wednesday is like
21st?
The 21st, there's a personnel policy and procedure board meeting here at 6 o'clock in this room.
How about October 5th?
Do we have to, we are required to meet on town property, right?
Yeah.
Yes. It could be at the pavilion, but the days are getting
Well,
shorter
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be right close to the next
Well,
meeting that we have
We
with
could
Ty and
still do the
Bond.
21st, but we need a different room, right?
It doesn't have to be a
might-
Thursday.
Yeah, that's true.
It'd be sorry to throw a wrench in.
October.
The CPC has been
Just do it
meeting
the
Wednesday. We may have a conflict.
Of,
so let's-
Of
September.
The 20, CPC is what?
I mean, we could still shoot
have an
for
October
Thursdays
meeting
late in the
scheduled?
month.
We would
just
October
for-
1st,
For his
first week
sake,
of
we'll do it
October.
on one day earlier, on the
Just-
27th.
Or the, yeah, or the 21st, just in a different room, right? So that was because
Yeah.
this room, the
Yeah.
personal
So
policy.
it could be a
commission. All right, so maybe if there's no opposition, the 21st, 6:30 in another room.
Okay.
And we're doing 6:30, we hope.
That's what I'll aim for. I'll go for 9:21, 6:30 p.m. Workroom on the first floor. And at the same time, is that what it's called, workroom?
Yeah, or
I'll-
here, if it,
Sounds like this is
I
coming.
think we'll have a conflict with this particular room, but
Oh, okay.
I'll make sure the workroom or some other space is free and then communicate accordingly.
Good point.
That just,
Do we approve the minutes with changes?
Yeah.
we didn't vote on it, but I can put that.
I'm okay with it.
I move to approve the minutes with the changes as noted.
Done.
That you say
And I-
all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm a very casual participant.
You're on
you're on the
TV.
team.
I'll let people know
Right?
I don't rule with iron fist.
Remind me not to sign up for any school committees or anything, yeah?
I have motion to adjourn.
Second?
Yeah,
Can I second?
you can.
What is
just
it?
do.
8:44.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.